host, Tyler. And in this podcast, what we do is we take a property and we say, hey, would we reboot it? Would we remake it? Would we do a sequel, a prequel, or a requel? What would we do with the property? And we pitch the movie idea. Some previous episodes was more integrals, where we kind of do a sequel in between two films or something like that. And we just kind of pitch ideas. And it's a fun time. And sometimes I'm with a co host, sometimes I'm by myself. And that's the podcast. So sit back, and if you're a movie lover, just enjoy. Today on the Requel podcast, we're going to be looking at a property that maybe some of you know, maybe some of you don't, but was very big to me as a child, and that's Dragonheart. Dragonheart is probably my favorite dragon property, film, series, however you want to look at it. I think the look of the dragon is amazing, is one of my favorite, and the effects of the original are starting to get a little worn down, but they still look so amazing for the time. Some history about Dragonheart was they originally there's some test footage and pictures you can find where they were going to use a puppet for the dragon, but because of things like the success of Jurassic Park, they went with CG, and it's probably the most fleshed out CG at the time for a character. The movie came out in '96, right? Yeah, '96, and starred Dennis Quaid, Peter Bosworth, Dina Meyer, and it had Jason Isaacs in a small role, and why am I drawing a name? David Thewlis. Jeez, I'm drawing a blank. I was like, my favorite Harry Potter character, and I was drawing a blank. But without further ado, we're going to talk a little bit more about Dragonheart. Dragonheart was a story of in a medieval time about a dragon that shares half their heart to save the life of a dying prince who is now king, whose mother, comes from a Gaelic type culture, who worshiped the dragons, respected the dragons, and what you find out is the boy is really not worthy of the dragon's heart. And the adventure is seeing how this knight Bowen, who is a good man, goes into this dark place and he hunts all the dragons, and the last dragon, of course, is the one dragon he's been wanting to hunt, thinking that the dragon's heart corrupted the boy, but in truth, the boy was already corrupted by his father and his just lustful desire. It has an amazing score. The Dragonheart theme alone is well beyond the caliber of the film itself. Now, like I said, the original Dragonheart film was 1996 and was released in theaters and was a box office success. And then 4 years later, in 2000, we got a sequel called Dragonheart: A New Beginning. Beginning. I can't talk. And the interesting thing about this was it was a lower budget direct to DVD sequel. Now, the early 2000s was the time of the direct to video sequel, or just the direct to video franchise making in any way. So I find it very interesting how this movie got made. I was trying to do some digging of why this was not a theatrical made film. Why was it direct to video? Why was it so, cheaply done and everything? I couldn't find anything. It does have a unique story. But then time goes by, and 15 years to be exact. And in 2015, we got Dragonheart 3, The Sorcerer's Curse, which is a prequel. I'm a big component of someone. I hate when a movie is listed as 3 and it's a prequel. Okay? I hate it. Then in 2017, we got Dragonheart, Battle for the Heartfire. And then in 2020, we got Dragonheart, Vengeance. Now, I'll give you a little bit of a story. The chronological reading or viewing of the Dragonheart series is Dragonheart 3, or what I'm going to call The Sorcerer's Curse, and we meet the dragon Drago. Drago's adventure continues in Dragonheart, Battle for the Heartfire. And then we go to Dragonheart Vengeance with Siveth, which is our first female protagonist dragon. Then Dragonheart, 1996, with Draco. And then we follow Dragonheart A New Beginning, 2000, with Drake, which is the official sequel. So my pitches are going to come in interesting intervals of inside, because I'm going to build my stories mainly out of threads left in the original film. So my first pitch is Dragonheart, Knight of the Old Code. It's more of an integral, much like the rise of the 300, Rise of the Empire, where some of it took place before 300, some of it during 300, and then some of it after 300. The film opens with Bowen as a boy, the knight that we met in Dragonheart. He is raised and shepherded to be a man of honor. His appointment with the king, this will be the first half of the film, how he meets the queen, leading to all the way up to his scene, the original film where Einan the prince is injured. So we'll get a little bit of, Bowen as a boy, how he comes to work for the king, how he is raised, and his rise a little bit to prominence, and working, and how, part of the story was his love for Einan the boy. Then we go to Bowen as he kills his first dragon. He is now a dragon slayer, taking place after he abandons Einan, feeling that Einan has become evil because of the dragon's heart. His rage, his hate. Bowen is not a great killer of dragons yet. As he goes along, he hears whispers and demonstrations of the king's cruelty, but he ignores that, feeling that if he completes his task in killing all the dragons, Einan will be good again. A theme would be trying to be something you're not, where Bowen is a good man trying to be evil, trying to be bad. His character would be somewhat similar to Malcolm Reynolds if you're a fan of Serenity/Firefly, where you're a good person trying to do bad. And he's trying to be a hunter, which he is really not a dragon hunter slayer per se. He would be placed in a situation where he would have to help defend some villagers from different pillagers after hunting and killing a dragon. He will meet other dragon slayers, and we will see the difference between the person that Bowen is compared to what these other dragon slayers are. Because Bowen, he does not fit in. He has Han Soloisms and everything. But the interesting part of his story is being that man of honor, that good man who's kind of corrupt because of an incident. He's not like the other dragon slayers in just his behavior and the way he positions himself in the world. An internal struggle is Bowen knowing he is not the knight he was. He was a knight, a man of code, a man of honor, and now he's just a man trying to earn a living. The film ends when Bowen kills the Scarred One before meeting Brother Gilbert, and he learns that there is one more he must go to finish off, which is referenced inside Dragonheart. And so it would be going back, we would have flashback sequences of Bowen younger and everything, and we're telling his story and what it means to be a knight of the old code. It's probably the most dragon-less Dragonheart, as we don't have a protagonist dragon, and it's more of a vehicle for Bowen and his story. But the dragons will be there, and we will see how they've interacted with society as a whole, and where Bowen thinks he should be in the world. So that's the first one. And then the second one, I had fun thinking of this one. I would call it Dragonheart Avalon. The film would not contradict or follow the previous prequels. It would tell its own story, but allow the audience to view without prior knowledge, but connect enough to those films to feel part of the franchise. The opening is the hatching of Draco in a nest with two other dragons, Griffin and the Scarred One. Griffin is a dragon that plays out in Dragonheart A New Beginning. We see the dragons living together much like a herd or a nest. But then dragon slayers arrive and start raiding it. We see the parental dragon that was there killed off, and then some of the knights arrive and stop the slayers. The knights are knight/monks who work basically from Avalon, who acknowledge the dragon's majesty, their magic. Some of the eggs are unhatched, and they're the eggs that came with Drago, which goes back to the Sorcerer's Curse film. So this would take place after the Sorcerer's Curse, but before Heartfire, if we're putting them all in order. During the raid, the baby, the Scarred One flees and is lost at times, supposedly later to be referenced and mentioned in the other film. The Monk Knights are part of a group led by magic that reveres the dragons, and they have like somewhat of a dragon sanctuary. It is there that we meet Sir Laris, a knight, He befriends the young Draco. At this time, he's just referred to as Dragon. He doesn't have a name, much like all the dragons in the stories have to give the humans names to call them because humans cannot speak dragon. And much like if anyone's familiar with the old Gargoyles TV series, where only the gargoyles were named certain ones by the humans. So Draco, that we know, is very minor in this film. He's kind of an observer. He's learning. It's going to help bring him to the dragon that he one day will be. And in some ways, he's kind of seen as the weak one, the runt, and Griffin kind of picks on him for that. But he is knowledgeable and smart. It is here with Sir Laris that the old code is created over time. Griffin proves to grow into a troublemaker because the dragons are maturing quickly. We learn that dragons have been here for a while on Earth, but when Draco came, things changed and ignited a new bond that we thought never existed between the species of dragon and humans. There's a lot of talk and lore with the stars and the asteroid where Draco come from. While on the island, there is a battle starting to the east or west, I gotta get my bearings, that needs aid. A young mage named Merlin takes Dragon and Laris, and they set out to help. Griffin goes as well. They leave the protection of the land of Avalon, and they meet King Uther Pendragon, who welcomes the aid and marvels in the welcoming of the dragons. Uther loves Griffin, and their black hearts align. Uther wants to conquest and rule with an iron fist, while his son looks on and is ashamed. Arthur, the son of Uther, eventually had to confront his father during a siege of land. Uther banishes his son to being much more than a slave stable boy, and while Merlin tries to advise the king of his growing madness, Uther relies on his alliance with Griffin, Merlin, and Dragon, and a third dragon that comes to their aid from the monastery, Draco. Now this is Draco, especially if I were to give it a name, it'd be like Draco 1. This is during the siege, Laris is injured and Draco shares his heart with Laris. And the two become one. And this has become a common practice in the lore since Draco had arrived. When now later as the story goes on, there's a large battle between Uther and Griffin towards the people, and we get a small subplot with Merlin taking Arthur to the land of Avalon to draw the sword Excalibur, coming back, and we have a battle. So it's going to be very rooted in Arthurian legend, because all those seeds were planted in the original Dragonheart. So Arthur, now with Excalibur, comes back to overthrow his father. Uther is killed, and Griffin leaves and flees. He's not heard from again, and that later leads into his story down the line. But the thing is, during the battle and the siege, Draco dies. And when Draco dies, sacrificing himself to save the humans, he creates the dragon's heaven. Now, if you remember in Dragonheart, which hopefully you've seen, that Bowen names Draco after the stars because he doesn't know what else to call him. And so this is kind of the origin of Draco, the creation of the star constellation that becomes the dragon heaven. And it also gives praise when later in Dragonheart, when Bowen names Draco, he states he would be honored to be named after those stars. So it kind of gives, a little bit of prowess to that story. But the film would end with the young nameless dragon stays with Arthur and Merlin to help set up the kingdom. And it would go on to help, like I said, really solidify the old code that then becomes common practice. Because we do know that dragons live for quite a long time and how they would grow. So those are my pitches for Dragonheart sequels. I think it'd be awesome. I think it's a great franchise. It's kind of lost its way, and I think a really good big budget film would be awesome. I mean, Solomon loves the films, and we even had to hunt down on eBay and get him a Draco figure, because there's nothing like buying toys from '96 to be really awesome. But what do you guys think? Drop some stuff in the comments. Let me know. And thank you for being part of the Requel podcast. Take care.